Once upon a time, 3 kings of the Orient made a star-guided journey, carrying with them 3 gifts. Their gifts are perhaps the most famous in all history: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. After they had presented them to the mysterious infant king lying in the stable where the star had led them, they returned home by a different route. As the 3 kings traveled homeward, each carried a souvenir of his star journey that was carefully hidden from the other kings. When they stopped the first night on their way home, their attendants pitched the silk pavilions and made camp. As the crescent moon appeared in the west, they finished their supper and retired. Even the camel drivers were asleep, and all was silent. King Balthazar, however, sat alone in his tent in the glow of a brass lamp, reflecting on the gift of gold that he had given the God-King in Bethlehem. He smiled at himself for the need he had felt to take something, some small token of remembrance, from that insignificant stable where the infant lay. By the light of the lamp he opened a golden case and removed a single piece of yellow straw, saying aloud, "I came on this quest to seek a king, a real king, because I do not feel kingly. I have always doubted my royalty. What makes me different from my camel drivers? Do I not also have the same needs for food and drink, for love and physical comfort, as do they? How is a king different, after all, from a carpenter or any commoner?" Slowly he held the straw up to the light as he mused to himself. "I, Balthazar, followed the star, seeking a god-king to confirm my own kingship. For are not all crowns made of cardboard, and all thrones of straw?" He replaced the straw in its precious case and continued. Back in Bethlehem, the father of that child was only a common peasant, a simple village craftsman. Yet he was more regal than any king I have ever seen. And the child's mother, was she not queenly in her simple dignity? What, I ask myself, is the source of this inner nobility that can change peasants into royalty? King Balthazar walked to the entrance of his tent, and looking up at the night sky crowded with stars, he said, "I saw the answer to my questions in the eyes of that infant. True nobility comes from an anointing of the heart, not of the head." Quietly the king returned to his bed, and as he retired, he thought to himself, "I am returning home by a different route and as a far different king. I rode to Bethlehem on my camel high above the faceless sea of commoners, slaves, and beggars, wondering about my kingship. I return home now, understanding that my camel drivers, every woman, man, and child I saw along the way, all of them are royal persons deserving of my respect and honor. Oh, indeed, that star was an omen of a new age. It has raised the curtain of history, not upon a revolution of slaves and servants overthrowing thrones. This is an evolution as slaves and servants become equal to kings and queens. As Balthazar blew out his oil lamp, he sighed. Such an age is beyond imagination. Once again the 3 silk pavilions were raised, and the camels bedded down as the noise of the caravan quieted on the second night. Everyone had retired, and the last embers of the campfire glowed orange in the darkness. King Melchior stood outside his pavilion, holding an oblong ivory box encrusted with rare jewels. The 3 kings had ridden these past 2 days in silence, each one reflecting on the events that had occurred in that little village of Bethlehem. What indeed had they seen in that poor, yet somehow sacred stable? Looking upward, King Melchior spoke as if to the sky. I followed one of your wondrous lights, hoping to find the answer to the most ancient of all riddles, the puzzle of life and death. My gift of myrrh was a sign of my own inner quest. Myrrh is the ointment used for burial, and gifts tell us a great deal about the giver. Ah, yes, even kings die, no matter how great or how powerful they are. Somewhere in this world I thought there must be a magic charm, a secret of how to escape from death. He opened the ivory box, removing a single yellow straw. I was ashamed, he mused to himself, to tell the other 2 that I wanted to take a keepsake from the stable. For a long time he stood silent, looking at the straw he held. I remember once reading a passage from one of their prophets of long ago. His name, as I recall, was Isaiah. He promised a king to these people, and when he comes, the prophet said, he will destroy death forever, and God will wipe away the tears from all faces. King Melchior held the hollow straw up to his eyes, pointing it towards the most brilliant star in the night sky. Death, I now see, is like this straw, merely a passageway from one life to another. And we slip through as easily as my breath passes through this straw. Softly, the wise man blew through his upraised straw. At that moment, King Caspar stepped out of the shadows, asking, Melchior, old friend, what are you doing with that piece of straw? Are you practicing some new form of magic? Oh, Caspar, what a start you gave me. This, well, it's only a piece of, I took it from the stable back there in Bethlehem. I wanted something to remind me of what I saw there, the infant that we came to adore. As I knelt before him, I saw something more than an infant with his two humble parents. I sensed an absence of fear in his mother and father, a sense of meaning in their simple lives. And in the child's eyes, I saw the answer to a riddle that has given me no peace through all these many years. Caspar chuckled. Well, there's no fool like an old fool. Go to bed, friend. We have a hard ride ahead of us tomorrow. Then he laughed again, gently. A souvenir. You took a souvenir? On the third night, after the 3 silk pavilions had been erected, and the camels fed and watered, the camp grew silent, as quiet as the vast sky above. King Caspar stood at the entrance of his tent, watching the stars as they turned in their ancient orbits. How strange, he thought, that we have ridden for 3 days without speaking to one another. He himself had said nothing more about his laughter the night before, nor had King Melchior tried to explain why he had taken a souvenir from the stable. King Caspar took his leather saddlebag from inside his tent and opened a side pouch. He removed a silver flask inscribed with intricate hieroglyphics. Opening the flask and reverently placing it on the sand, he knelt before it. He made a profound bow, and after a few moments of silent adoration, he straightened but remained kneeling. Looking up at the stars, he spoke. I confess to you, I also took a souvenir from that stable. I came on this star-led adventure because I needed to find a God to believe in. My gift of incense, a traditional offering to the holy, was a telltale sign of my search for belief. Oh, I believed in some sort of impersonal divinity, but I could put no form or reason to it. In the stillness, the silk cloth of the pavilion rustled softly. I, the great Caspar, he spoke mockingly, was the agnostic king. I came seeking a religious experience, some divine revelation, and my disappointment must have been the greatest as we entered that livestock stable. I was the last of the 3 to approach the infant to adore him. How ungodlike it was. The shabby stable, an infant lying in a bed of straw in a makeshift crib, his 2 peasant parents beside him. There were no heavenly lights, no divine thunder rumbled about us, no angelic music filled that stable. My gift of incense in its golden chest seemed humorously out of place. Caspar removed a single yellow straw from the flask and bowed before it. I am sorry. I laughed at Melchior. I was laughing at myself, really, for I also had taken a souvenir from that place. I remember it as if it were this very night. How slowly I came forward to kneel before the infant. It seemed cruel to refuse to do so, an embarrassment to my two fellow kings. So I simply pretended adoration. Then that tiny baby looked at me. Everything and everyone there was suddenly bathed in light. There was a brilliance in those small eyes greater than the star that we had followed. That stable became more awesome than any great temple I had ever visited. Everything, even the straw on the floor, was aflame with glory. That's why I picked you up. Leaving his tent, Caspar climbed to the top of a silent sand dune, and looking up into the starry night, he raised his fragile straw to the heavens. That child has come to end all religion and to make all temples needless. Religion, by its very name, he said, is that which separates life from God. This small child, I know, will someday bring together as one life and religion. Common and ordinary life will become sacred. There will be no need for temples. And having said this, with his arm, he swept it outward to encompass the entire night sky as he said, "This will be the great temple." Out of the shadows stepped Balthazar and Melchior, and the three stood without speaking, surrounded by the silence of the stars. Finally, King Balthazar said, "Each of us, you know, is going home a different way. We began our journey as men set apart by our regal birth, by our priestly knowledge, different from the common people we encountered. Noble companions, we have ridden 3 days now from Bethlehem. Did we find what we came seeking? And if so, how has our view of life changed?" For a long time, the three kings stood silent. Then they began to speak, each in turn. "I, Balthazar, have seen the beginning of a new age, the end of a time when only a select few are given reverence, treated as gods come to earth. I have seen the end to all kings and queens as the anointed ones, for now every person will be seen as royal, unique, and possessed of great dignity. I, Melchior, I had seen the death of death. Now I see only life in countless forms of transformation. And I, Caspar, what have I seen? I have seen God. And now I see God everywhere."
save your people from darkness